Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper and TireRack.com. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
Thank you, Alec Webb. Welcome, everyone, to MotorWeek podcast number 339. I am indeed your host, John Davis. We've got a wide range of cars and topics to get to today. On the vehicle side, we'll bring you up to date on our long-term Nissan Sentra that's proven to be very enjoyable to drive, so say our staff. Then we'll segue into our initial impressions of the just-revealed 2026 Honda Passport, a vehicle that won't actually hit the streets until sometime after the first of the year. Then another enjoyable drive, the Toyota GR Corolla with the newly available automatic gearbox. We'll have our first drive impressions of that one. And since this is our first podcast since the presidential election, we'll challenge ourselves to look into the near future and see how the change in leadership might or might not affect the adoption of electric vehicles in the U.S. Joining me today are senior writer and two-wheeling reporter Brian Robinson.
Sweet. Thank you for the promotion.
Yeah, no, you earned it. Digital producer Jessica Ray.
Hello.
And staff writer Alex Kellum.
Howdy.
Alex, we're going to start with you.
Oh, man.
Okay. We've had this Nissan Sentra in our long-term fleet for, 3 months now? It's now about to leave us. It's the top sporty trim, the SR trim. It came to us with the promise of being fun to drive, but I think this once upon a time entry-level nameplate has really matured and been given, it's even more enjoyable to drive, I think, than all of us anticipated. So bring us up to date on our long-term test with the Sentra and what you thought of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it has matured in some ways, but there is one key thing that the Sentra has retained,
CVT?
and that's... Well, I was going to say that it's a bargain, but...
It is a bargain.
But CVT, yeah. So we'll get into powertrain details in just a second, but I do actually want to start it because I want to frame it with the value. The Sentra right now starts in the low 20s. I think for 25 pricing with delivery, it's about 22 and a half hours. The top trim, the SR with our options and whatnot, is just under $30,000.
Still a bargain.
Which is a very good deal when you're going to compare it to other. It is a compact. It's a sedan, four-door.
But it's huge. I mean,
it is surprisingly big.
It's not huge, maybe, but it's
huge
certainly
is a little hyperbole.
Yeah.
But there's a lot, especially in the second row. Like the leg room is decent, and I was actually surprised by the trunk space, which I was going to talk about later. But 14.3 cubic feet, in case anybody was.
That's pretty
chomping
good.
at the bit, wants to know that right now. But yeah, I couldn't really think of another good way to start it or to frame it other than the fact that it has retained its sort of value status in the compact four-door market. But yeah, so we've had it for about 3 months now. It's leaving us this week. I think we're all kind of sad to see it go. It's been kind of like a... jack of all trades in a way. It's not just a daily grind commuter. It's been used as a road tripper.
I took one in it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yep.
Brian, you took a road trip in it as well.
I probably put more miles on it than anyone else. And it's surprisingly good on the highway for a compact while being plenty entertaining on the back roads as well.
Yeah, and I was going to kind of like lay out some specs here for the listener.
Sorry, we just got to let you talk, man. We're
Whoa, no.
We keep hijacking you.
I was going to say.
Wait a minute. Brian Robinson actually drove it in the hills of North Carolina.
Oh, yeah. One hill at a time. I had them all.
You were on some pretty challenging, twisty roads.
Oh, yeah. I enjoyed it for sure. Perhaps maybe a little too much.
Yeah, I was going to lay out the specs and then kind of open the floor to everybody to chime in with their experiences with it. But just for the viewer's sake, so we keep saying it's a compact. It is a compact. It's front-wheel drive. Powertrain, I believe, is unchanged for a while. It's a 2-liter i4, and it's paired up to a CVT. So we're talking 149 horsepower, 146 pound-feet of torque. The engine itself is, I think, fine. I think it's adequate for a little commuter. I think the CVT, if there is a weak point, it's the CVT. And it's not even that it's really all that bad. The big thing I noticed that when you really kind of lay into the accelerator a little bit, it kind of like skips a beat. It kind of like hesitates a little bit. When we did our testing, because we did actually road test a 24 Sentra. So we do have all the instrumented testing done. 0 to 60 was 10.5 seconds. Not terribly slow, also not blistering fast. I would say, maybe the 0 to 60 is a little less important to some folk, but I can say anecdotally, when you're on the highway and you want to pass somebody, although the CVT does kind of skip a beat there, for me at least, like once it kind of gets into the power, it's fine. The thing that's surprising about it is how well it handles, how well it feels. You can safely carve up traffic in this thing. Not that I'm, condoning people cutting through lanes.
Would ever do that.
But if you were to, you do have to get over. You do have to go on side streets, or you are on hilly North Carolina streets. It is actually quite a bit of fun. It handles pretty well. I thought the steering was actually pretty nice. A little bit of body roll, but.
I took a trip out to the Eastern Shore and back, so it wasn't that far, but, put about 350 miles on it on a weekend, and it was very comfortable. It did everything we needed it to be. It was fuel efficient. But what got me is, I don't remember the name of the color, but ours is that kind of burnt orange.
Oh, yeah.
Color. And I thought, well, everyone will pick this one out of the crowd, out of the parking lot, because no one else would have this color. I saw 2 or 3 others, Sentras, that weekend that were the same color. Actually ended up parking next to one. So it must be a very popular color, and everybody that was getting out of them were way less than half my age. So I assume it has some appeal to younger drivers, and that's who seem to be driving them.
It was recently, like a year or two ago, refreshed, so that's why it's got kind of like the sharper looks, the sportier looks. It also has like the orange, but there's like a nice blue color, a red and all that. So like, while this isn't a super flashy compact, like you can have some fun both driving it and, with the way it looks. But we talked about how good of a bargain it is, and that also comes down to fuel economy. So we've wrapped up our testing of it, our 3-month testing with it. And not going to ask for a drum roll because that'll mess up the audio, but to build up suspense, our final tally was 34.5 miles per gallon.
Okay.
Which is actually better than their combined.
Yeah. EPA
so
rates it at 33 combined. So we actually, and I'm sure the road trips kind of played into that a little bit, leaning a little more on the highway side, but not too bad, not too shabby.
Yeah, I find the Nissans with the CVTs always tend to overachieve a little bit compared to some others. Yeah,
and that's actually the whole purpose of the CVT. So it's supposed to give you good fuel economy. Brian, anything else that popped out on you while you were on the trip?
No, that's what I mentioned is surprisingly good on the highway for a compact. Had a lot of people in the car at various points, and no one ever really complained, saying it was perfectly comfortable for passengers as well as the driver. And it does have that huge trunk that Alex mentioned as well. Lots of room for gear.
The interior has been not only modernized, but they also upped the sportiness of that, borrowing some things from the other Nissan products. And when you got in it, I didn't feel like this was any kind of a bargain car in any way, shape, or form. The vents were the nice round kind of sporty shape. You could tell there was some Z influence in the interior. And gauges, of course, were very clear. I mean, the one thing about Nissans is I always feel like they're highly reliable. I mean, because their powertrains are almost bulletproof. And that, plus a comfortable interior and this feel like you're in something much more useful, much more fun to drive than just a typical compact car.
Yeah.
It was a nice traveling companion.
And I was going to say, to the effect of that with the interior, if you really hunt for like, did they use a cheap plastic here or whatever, like, sure, you might find one here or there, but all your touch points and everything visually feels great. Yeah. The physical controls for the HVAC and the stereo. Oh, yeah, seats are comfortable. It's just because of the price, don't think you're getting something that's lesser off,
Jessica, you've been uncharacteristically quiet.
Well, you guys have had probably a lot more time than I have in the Sentra. But no, I mean, I kind of agree with a lot of the sentiments that were said. To me, I think the interior stood out the most for that price point, because so many times, you'll get into a car that's within the $20,000 range, and the interior, gets like the crummier screens or just doesn't feel quite as nice as you're expecting for something that you're about to spend over $20,000 on, right? So the SR interior specifically really impressed me. Just felt like ergonomically worked well. I felt like it would age very well. So yeah, I think it would be a very comfortable vehicle for anybody to just get into.
Yeah, I think we're going to miss it from our fleet. Anybody got anything else? Thanks, Alex. Good report.
Anytime.
Thanks, everybody. We're always telling you that there are so many ways that you can get MotorWeek content. If you've got a screen, you can watch MotorWeek, all of that. Well, the newest way, which is increasingly popular, we're glad to say, to get all our MotorWeek information, to see all our videos, it's our brand new MotorWeek app. It's only been out a few months. It's available now from your favorite app store. It works on all of the popular phones and tablets as far as we know. And the big deal is it's not only 100% free, it's one of the few automotive apps out there that's not trying to sell you something. So along with all of our MotorWeek road test videos and our features, it also has a unique EV Everything tab that allows all you EV wannabes, or if you already own one, to quickly search the specs of every electric vehicle that's on sale now, both new and used. So if you haven't seen the MotorWeek app and you are a car fan and you think you may be buying a car or just looking to narrow down the field, go and download our MotorWeek app today. Take it with you. And as we say here, you'll never miss a mile of MotorWeek. Okay. Moving on, we just recently finished a road test of the 2024 Honda Passport with the Trail Sport trim, part of a rather minor 2024 refresh update for Honda's two-row crossover utility. But we knew that a much newer 2026 Passport was in the wings, and just before we recorded this podcast, it was revealed. So Jessica, tell us all about it. Is it that new?
It is. And kind of a little shockingly new. And why I say that is because the styling is a bit unexpected for this model specifically. So the Pilot, which is the three-row, got an update for 24, and it's seen some updates for 25. But it visually... that platform was aging a little bit. It was sort of getting a little round compared to a lot of its competition, which is now going for bolder and sleeker and more modern. More chiseled look. And so the Pilot had a really nice update that I felt was like very in line with the rest of the segment. And the Passport and the Pilot for a long time have been very similar in their design language.
Almost length was the biggest difference, and the third row.
Correct. Yep. And so this Passport has actually really gone more the way of the Honda Prologue, which so it is sleeker, it's boxier, it's definitely bolder.
Do you think they intentionally kind of adopted some of that EV vibe like Kia has done with the Santa Fe?
Definitely. Yeah. Just from its face, the headlights themselves are very sleek and rectangular. Everything is very boxy. Which isn't shocking at all, considering that seems to be the design language that everybody is upholding. But it is certainly very different from what we have seen from Honda on pretty much anything else that they've made. So it has a very unique look to it. And I bring that up because, like I had mentioned, the Pilot and the Passport were so similar for so long that it seems as now Honda is breaking off the Passport to really be its own thing and to sort of tailor it a little bit more, and specifically for the adventure type. I was
going to say it's starting to sound like a Bronco-esque type approach.
Yes. Yeah. So, there's three trims here for this fourth generation. You have an RTL base trim, but then you have a Trail Sport and a new Trail Sport Elite trim. So the top two trims are specifically off-road minded trims. It's bold. It's got lots of black black accents. And then, of course, with the Trail Sport and Trail Sport Elite, comes with an off-road tuned suspension. You get steel skid plates, recovery hooks, all-terrain tires, special drive modes for the off-road, additional camera views, all sorts of little tweaks to just be ready to go off the beaten path. But under the hood of the 2026 Passport, I think will keep a lot of people happy. It keeps the same 3.5-liter V6 engine, which is now mated to a 10-speed automatic, which is the first time that the Passports had a 10-speed. Previously had a 9-speed. So just really tuning everything. And it gets 5 additional horsepower, 285 horsepower, 262 pound-feet of torque. That remains unchanged. No fuel economy numbers or anything quite like that. But if you're buying something like this, you're not focused on anything like that. But I will say that 2024 model that we recently tested, we ended up getting 23.8 miles per gallon.
Which isn't bad.
Which is fine for
a
V6.
6-cylinder. And actually, that's, I think, one of the most key points. Very few mid-size SUVs, after they've been re-engineered, are keeping 6-cylinder engines.
Correct.
So this is kind of, even though it's straight, it doesn't have a turbocharger, and that's naturally aspirated. That sets it apart, and I think that's going to appeal to a lot of prospective buyers.
Definitely.
A lot of people are not happy about the 4-cylinder turbos that everybody's running around with.
And like I said, it gets new looks to it, but also it grows. It does get bigger. We have 3 more inches of wheelbase, which I think is what truly eliminates the kind of rounded, cutesy vibe that the Passport used to have, and this now feels like a rugged utility. I think comments were saying that it was giving like first-gen Pathfinder vibes a little bit. Just kind of harkens back to the off-roaders of old that everybody seems to want to have. You also get 2 additional inches in length. So everywhere gets a little bit bigger, and that has a pretty big impact in interior-wise when it comes to passenger space and also cargo space. So I did a comparison from the previous generation. You're talking right now, the one that we just tested had 41.2 cubic feet of cargo space behind the second row. Now remember, this is like the size of a 3-row, just without the 3rd row. And so you now have almost 3 more cubic feet of cargo space back there, and then you have almost 6 more cubic feet of cargo space with the second row folded.
Row down.
So lots more interior room, and that's huge because that's why people buy the Passport. They want all of that space to be able to put people and or things. And that's specifically, why people also buy the Trail Sport as a trim as well.
The interior styling seems like a departure, although I think I'm looking at a photograph of it, and you've got very horizontal gauges. That kind of reminds me a bit of the Accord and Civic.
Yeah, I mean...
But a big screen, and it's still propped on top of the dash.
Unsurprisingly, it's got a very similar interior design language to the Civic, the Accord. Pretty much all of the new Hondas that we've seen, it seems like they like to reuse a lot of those materials, which I think is not a bad thing, because I do think it's pretty attractive. But you get a 12.3-inch central display. It's a touchscreen. It's got Google built in, which we all have had experience with it in our long-term Accord, and I mean, I like it personally. I think it looks good.
It's got a volume knob.
It's got a volume knob. You get a 10-inch digital instrument cluster, which seems pretty cool. And because if you get one of the Trail Sport models, you're going to get cool digital readouts for roll, pitch, that kind of stuff in your displays. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting and good move from Honda to update the Passport. I don't know that these are like the hottest sellers, but I do think this segment is important to a lot of buyers.
Everybody wants to look rugged. Everybody wants to basically, I mean, we almost have gone full circle back to when the original XJ Cherokees and so forth came out from Jeep. Very square, very rugged, looking very capable. And we've seemed to have gone back to that. I guess it's like fashion. It repeats itself every generation and a half or so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks very much. I can't wait to actually drive it. It's a good-looking vehicle.
Early next year.
That's
when it will come out. That's so. Isn't that crazy? We're talking about a 2026 model.
Well, all you have to do is get one day into the previous year, and you can say it's the next year. So, come January 1st of 2025, you can do a 2026.
And I will say, Honda and Acura love doing it.
Oh yeah,
they love having
like being ahead of the game.
Yes, they love doing that.
We do have one more vehicle that we're going to chat about later in the show. Another of the many unexpected fun-to-drive cars we seem to be seeing recently. It's the new automatic version of the Toyota Corolla GR, and don't let that turn you off. So stay tuned for that one. But first, we're going to have our lightning round, and it's a very special lightning round because we no longer keep a clock, and I have a feeling trying to keep everybody to 30 seconds on this one is going to be difficult. With the election of Donald Trump as the upcoming 47th president of the U.S., it is highly likely that his administration will significantly modify emission standards and federal incentives that so far have been driving electric vehicle adoption here. So on this first podcast after the election, what do you all think that this means for EV sales for the next 4 years and for the health of the EV manufacturers? Because we sure as heck know that it's not going to be business as usual. Nobody want to start? Everybody afraid?
I don't know.
I'll start. I think it was pretty obvious before even this election that the federal government, and probably California too, since they set their own rules, and the states that go along with them, we're going to have to back off some of the mandates. And even though they say they're not trying to force people into electric cars, in reality, they're lowering the tailpipe emissions allowances so much that you have no other alternative but an electric car. So having said that, less people are buying them than expected. Less people are buying them for lots of reasons: cost, charging infrastructure. We've politicized electric cars in this country. So somewhere, somebody was going to have to give, or all sales would dry up, and I don't think that would have been allowed. So whether it's Donald Trump or the Democrats or the California, the public is not buying electric cars like they would all like them to buy them. So the fact that we're probably now going to have some pause in the emissions tail-type mandates, maybe that's just a good thing to let the market catch up. I think the big question is you have two sets of standards. You have the federal standards, and then you have the California standards, which 12 other states have adopted. It's one thing for the federal standards to say, hey, we're going to lighten the load on having to buy EVs, but the California standards may stick in place a lot longer. That makes two separate situations for the auto manufacturers. And I think we don't know the outcome of that, whether the federal government will try and rescind California's right to do it, whether that will end up as a Supreme Court case. We're going to have a lot of confusion about EV sales over the next 4 years, and I worry about the health of some of the manufacturers that have committed to EVs in a big way. That's my say.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I do agree.
Do I leave you breathless?
I'm like, where do I pick up from there? I mean, that's a good perspective. I think. What do I think it means for EVs and EV manufacturers? I don't think that the tax credit is going to go anywhere.
That's a federal law. That would be hard to do away with.
Yeah, I mean, that's
they can modify
that's
it.
That's in the Inflation Reduction
Correct.
Act specifically, but I don't. I think it's actually unpopular. It would be unpopular to remove that, and specifically because Trump has such a close relationship with
Elon Musk,
who
has benefited from that.
He really has benefited because I think all of the Teslas qualify for the full tax credit, which I think is a huge thing. I think for me, the big thing here is going to be what happens to vehicles that are made in Mexico. That seems to be a hot button topic, depending upon whether they end up doing the larger tariffs from vehicles imported from Mexico.
Because the Chinese are on the verge of opening EV plants there.
They are, yes, that's their way of getting into our market. But you have to remember, Ford makes the Mach-E down in Mexico.
A lot of cars are made in Mexico.
I mean, the Maverick I had, that was built in Mexico, and it's built there to also cut costs and for it to be affordable for Americans. But also, Stellantis is launching the Wagoneer S, which is supposed to be built in Mexico as well. So that is definitely something that could have a pretty big impact on U.S. OEMs specifically.
Because I guess it would be difficult for our government to say, hey, we're only going to put tariffs on EVs made in Mexico that come from China or something. In other words, you can't, that sounds like that would be very difficult to do.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to be very specific with the words that you used in something like that.
Anyone else? Brian?
These type of topics, a little out of my pay grade. Not great at predicting things. I have enough trouble dealing with reality. But as far as...
Seems like you do that pretty well.
As far as what this means for EVs and EV manufacturers, I think the standalone EV manufacturers will definitely struggle a little bit more. We've already seen like Rivian just partner with Volkswagen this week.
Yeah.
They're going to have to partner up with someone. But as you mentioned, California makes their own rules, and I'm sure that they're going to push back against whatever Trump and his administration comes up with, just for the sake of pushing back against it. So it'll be interesting.
Alex?
Right at 30 seconds.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Very concise.
I gave my 30 seconds to Jess. I think she covered it.
I
But
know,
no,
I did.
I know it
2
is.
minutes.
I had an answer. I just, making it funny. Yeah.
Keep us laughing.
And he's also
I'm
making fun
trying.
of how much I was yapping there, definitely.
Yeah, well.
I went on and on, sorry.
We'll keep that off the
You
record.
made up for the Sentra.
Yeah, we'll keep that off the record, yeah. No, I've always felt like some of the... oh, wow, the word's escaping me. I'm a writer here, by the way. The mandates. There we go. Words. Like by 2030 or by 2030X or whatever. I've always felt like they were a little unrealistic, and I figured eventually they were going to get pushed or something would happen. Like you said, something's got to give. Something like this big of a shakeup in administration, I have to wonder if maybe certain automakers like those that do still have, internal combustion options, and obviously that's been their legacy, like if they're going to feel a little less pressure, and will they then decide, oh, well, now we can make other products?
Or keep making other products.
Yeah, I
saying,
think
like investing in hybrid or
perhaps
or plug-in hybrids.
Or if emission standards are lowered to an extent, will not to pick on anyone in particular, but obviously I'm a Mustang guy, and I have to think, does Ford, are they kind of feeling a little bit of a reprieve there? Like, sweet, we can make
the Mustang
V8 Mustangs,
longer.
and we can also not worry about having to lose horsepower or lose something because we have to meet a certain standard of emissions.
Or maybe we'll get a 2026 Jeep 392 Final Edition.
Yeah.
A third Final Edition.
Mm-hmm. Encore Edition.
I lived through the 70s and early 80s when the car makers had to cut back output in order to meet emission standards, and which, by the way, continually got delayed several times until, they didn't go into effect, until like 10 years later than they were supposed to. But I can remember the 1978 Chevrolet Corvette that I had with its small block V8 that put out all of 185 horsepower. Mm-hmm. And now we've got a lot of four cylinders that do a lot better than that with 2 liters. And that was all being detuned for emission standards. So in a way, we've really come around again to almost that same thing. Eventually, I do think that, someday electric cars will be the only thing you can buy, or I should say electric cars and maybe hydrogen cars, but something with an electric motor. But I don't think that day is 2035 here, and I don't think it's 2035 in Europe, even though Europe hasn't done anything yet, and they're seeing massive declines in EV sales because they're pulling back a lot of their incentives. So who knows?
John, do you think, if we see a pretty significant rollback of some of these standards, I mean, manufacturers, do you think that they will be focusing on how to make their gas products more efficient? I mean, I think you're onto something. Because I feel like
right
that's
now,
the solution.
Hybrids are hot all of a sudden after basically, except for Toyota being kind of, on the sidelines. And I firmly expect to see more hybrid vehicles, either with or without a plug. And that will, of course, make your normal gas engine, in most cases, much more efficient. There are other ways to get to this fossil fuel reduction besides mandating full EVs.
I was going to say, because it's like, even if we saw a pretty significant reduction, it's not like automakers could be like, oh, wow.
No, they know they're only got
we don't have to move. We don't have to move forward. We can, keep going at status quo. That's just not the case.
And they supply vehicles for a world market, and other countries are keeping their mandates. So.
That's a good point.
But I do think it means many internal combustion engine vehicles will be around longer. Chrysler's already hinting that the Hemi is not gone. It's going to be still around in at least one vehicle, their full-size truck, and might pop back up in something else.
I feel like they've announced 4 times that the Hemi was gone.
Yeah.
And it's not actually, like, we just keep seeing it pop up places.
I can remember when this MotorWeek went on the air in 1981, we thought the V8 engine was dead.
Wait,
yeah, we did.
Really?
We thought it was
almost
going
45
away.
years ago?
That and the convertible were going into extinction. And thank goodness they're both still around. Okay, anybody else? All right, that was, we hope to be around to be able to tell you in 4 years we told you so, although I'm not sure we really came to any conclusions there. Okay, I want to pause a minute to thank the sponsors of our podcast and, of course, of our PBS television series, MotorWeek. Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper, thank you very much. Also, a big thank you for the folks over at TireRack.com. We know our viewers and listeners and all of us appreciate your dedication to MotorWeek. Now, when we tested the 2023 Toyota GR Corolla, we called it a huge win for Toyota. And we said that the Gazoo racing treatment made that little humble economy car Corolla truly track capable. And we love the combination of all-wheel drive and a short-throw 6-speed manual transmission. We knew the manual would limit the Corolla's appeal, and I guess Toyota knew that too, since they are now adding an automatic to the GR Corolla. Brian Robinson, to you, is this a step forward, back, sideways, or how do you really view the latest iteration of this very affordable hot hatchback?
Well, I'll just ramble on a little bit about the car, and then hopefully that answer will come out at some point. Most people hear Corolla, they think of the small, fuel-efficient commuter car sedan. This Corolla is nothing like that. It's a 5-door hatch built by Gazoo Racing specifically for being on track, and is also streetable, but mainly designed for the track. Hand-built almost in Japan, not even the same factory that all other Corollas are built in. So the big deal, all-wheel drive, of course, as you mentioned, big deal. The new thing is the automatic transmission, which is an 8-speed, also developed, all-new transmission developed by Gazoo Racing specifically for this car.
Wow, that's an effort. That's an investment. And
I got a chance to drive it down at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and I didn't really get a whole lot of time in the original GR Corolla, so enjoyed it thoroughly. As far as the transmission specifically, They made a point of telling you to try it in auto mode because they put a lot of time and effort into the software to give it almost a PDK kind of logic to shift when you want it to. It's got all kinds of sensors. As soon as you back off the throttle, if it senses you're going in a corner, it starts banging out downshifts for you.
That's one of the things about a Porsche, the PDK that we like so much.
So in auto mode, driving it in auto mode for a few laps, it was pretty impressive. Switched over to manual mode. It gives you, if you're in the right drive mode and manual mode, it gives you full control. Like if you're in second, it'll just let you bang on the rev limiter all day long if that's what you're into. It won't shift unless you tell it to, which is awesome. So it's not quite a dual clutch or sequential manual, but it's as close as you can be with an automatic. And you wouldn't really know it, that it wasn't a full dual clutch. They've also upgraded the suspension while they were at it, put in some new dampers, tightened up the rear suspension mostly. They just thought that would help it roll through the corners a little better, which that car, for being so small, it feels so stable and has so much grip. It really is a blast to drive. And they threw in a little extra torque as well. Same 300 horsepower i3. You were just talking about that Corvette V8 with 180 horsepower.
It's got almost twice.
This is a 300 horsepower three-cylinder. The torque goes from 273 pound-feet up to 295 pound-feet. And for the manual fans, manual will still be available for sure. Still the standard transmission, and they even put a new clutch in there with a little more feel. I remember if that last one, the take-up was like really high up in it. They've kind of redone that, so it has much better feel to it. The automatic required a oil cooler, obviously, so they opened up the whole front fascia for all models to allow a little more airflow, and made a couple tweaks as far as packaging, like the locking front and rear diffs are now standard. Used to have to upgrade to get that. So they took a extremely fun, track-capable car and made it more of everything, more fun, more capable. The automatic transmission is a $2,000 option, puts it around $40,000.
It's a lot of car for $40,000.
Well,
is it?
It's not a lot of car size-wise.
No,
but,
not size-wise, but as far as capabilities.
Performance-wise, yeah. It's not a bargain, but it's a lot of performance car for the money. Absolutely.
Help everybody with the different types of transmissions. We've talked about a lot today. First, we talked about the CVTs, continuously variable transmissions that really don't have normal gears. This is an automatic transmission with a torque converter like we're used to.
Correct.
Which, for a long time, everyone was told us that you'll never get the gear engagement, the precision in a torque converter automatic that you can get into a dual clutch automatic, which basically uses the dual clutches instead of a torque converter. This basically, in your opinion, though, that's what the PDK is, gave you that same kind of instant engagement or very close to it.
Yeah, very, very close to it. 9/10 of it, absolutely. Yeah. And they also threw in a launch mode with the automatic while they were at it. They didn't give any 0 to 60 times, so I don't know if it's quicker than the manual or not. The launch control was cool, but it's a little soft. It's not like a super brutal launch.
Doesn't hit you in the back of the head.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's any quicker than the manual or not. But yeah, fun car.
Well, we'll find out when we get it in here. Anyone else?
I was saying, what are do you know the trim breakdowns of the GR Corolla?
The same as it was before, except they don't have like the
There was the Morizo
edition. Yeah.
There's a higher
or the Circuit Edition. That's probably not there.
There's a higher end premium package now available.
Core, Premium, and Premium Plus.
Yeah.
Okay, so pretty simplified lineup.
Why do you think they're doing this vehicle? I mean, cars are going, market share for cars is going away, not only here, but a lot of other places. We haven't seen an all-new hot hatchback this impressive in quite a while. What do you think their marketing guys are doing? What are they telling us?
They're just trying to, drum up the excitement. And, I mean, most people in the country, it's still hard to get a GR Corolla. Mm-hmm. So there's certainly that excitement level is is definitely working, and I'm sure when they come in and can't get one, they try and sell them something else. But I think it's part of an overall Gazoo racing effort. They're definitely elevating that brand.
To a sub-brand.
Yeah, it's now replacing the Toyota TRD racing development here in the U.S. Pretty much anything, any car, Toyota race car on any track is now going to be part of the Gazoo racing family, including NASCAR. Yeah. So, and this car, they also showed a full race spec version of this GR Corolla that's going to be hitting the track next year in a lot of different classes. So, yeah, it's just a part of Toyota's overall racing efforts.
I wonder if this is the birth of a Japanese-style AMG. I mean, it's kind of interesting. It almost seems like they follow a similar path.
Yeah. I mean, you have a lot of enthusiasts out there, and this is on the lower end. But I also think there's such a love and maybe a resurgence of love for Japanese cars specifically. You see that in the used market, and I think in the new market, people are really interested in it.
We didn't talk about price, did you?
$40,000 with the automatic,
that's right.
38 with the manual.
Yeah. I think you might be right because I think the popularity of importing older Japanese performance cars is still very much alive and thriving
huge.
in the U.S.
Yeah, they're actually that's going to wind down soon because they're already changing
Are they running
regulations.
out of them?
Well, no, they're clamping down on especially those mini trucks. People are buying
the
those.
K cars, the K trucks. Yeah.
Well, you never
Well,
know.
a lot of states, like, it's really hard to get them registered now.
Yeah.
I think in Maryland.
Yeah. Well, Maryland's
That's a topic
always
for another
been kind of-
podcast.
I'm not sure if that segues into our rant and raves, but that's about the part of the show that we're at. Thanks, Brian. That was a good report.
Actually, it
rant
does,
and
because I know
raves.
exactly which one you've got going on.
Mine has to do with being bullied on the highways if you're driving a smaller vehicle, which this certainly qualifies.
Was that what you were thinking, Alex?
Qualifies.
No,
And,
but I can relate.
I'm just very, it's almost like, I don't know if I've noticed an uptick in bulliness in the last couple of weeks. You've also seen a lot more road rage reports. I don't know if this is an offshoot of the election and some people are very unhappy, but I know in the last 24 hours, I've nearly been driving a smaller car. I've almost been forced off the road by about 3 different times. One time the guy wasn't paying attention. The other 2 times it was very intentional. And the road bullying, I guess, is my term, and it seems to be on the rise. And I just think, if you did hit me, it's your fault, and you're probably going to lose your license. So, but of course, you put me in the hospital.
I don't think you would lose. It's really hard to lose your license for something like that.
I don't know about that. It depends on whether they can prove that.
I mean,
you
if
did
they hit you,
reckless-
John Davis, maybe
no,
they wouldn't lose
reckless
their license.
reckless driving. But I don't know. Did anybody else experience an uptick in bulliness, or is it just business as usual? Am I just noticing it more because I'm driving something smaller?
I will say I do think you're noticing it more because you're driving something smaller. Do you want to mention what you're driving? No? Okay.
It's a variety of things.
Yeah, you have some small cars.
Wow, okay.
I have a couple of small cars in my fleet.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's specifically because you're driving smaller cars more often, and I think it's something that people who drive small cars probably regularly empathize with.
Yeah.
But it's been a while since we've had like a really, really small car in, because even that Sentra that we were talking about,
That's not small anymore.
That's not small.
But if you're driving, like I do have an old Mini Cooper, and for a long time it's been like they get so close you can't see anything but the headlights, and they want to push you down the road. Well, what happens when somebody wants to push you down the road? You slow down. Just out of, just like you're angry, so you can't do anything else, so you just don't go very fast. It's like it's counterproductive. Stay back and I'll get out of your way. I don't know. That's me. Anyone else got a rant and rave? Oh, my gosh.
No, sir,
don't hear the crickets in
nothing to
here.
add.
Someone always
I
does.
can
Alex?
rave. I can rave.
All right, Alex.
And it's actually
Good.
the GR.
Good.
I know.
Good.
Yeah. So I love running people off
end
the
on a
road in my
positive
big
note.
Mustang. No, it's actually the GR Corolla. So I haven't driven the new one with the automatic, but when we had the manual in, we took it to Summit Point, Jefferson Circuit. And one of the things I really liked about that car was the all-wheel drive system. It's got that torque split where you can change it from like a 50-50 70-50 distribution to like a 30-70 for more of like a rear bias system. And there's another one, I think it's like 60-40 with more going to the front. And that is such a cool system. And I wish more hot hatches had stuff like that.
So what does that really do for you?
It kind of just changes up the way, like if you were going to talk about the way you're driving it, like changes the feel of it. So like I'm used to a rear wheel drive car. So if I get in that car and there's like a 50-50 balance for all-wheel drive, if I want to, it's a little dial, if I remember correctly, kind of down by the shifter that you can, I don't know if you have to have it in a certain drive mode to do it.
Well, that's how you adjust it. You
Okay.
can't do it by numbers. You do it by drive modes.
Okay.
And the drive modes are set up with the different percentages. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Are you
So
saying you wish your Mustang had that?
No, I think look, I love a good FR, front engine, rear wheel drive. I've been driving them forever, and I'm happy with my Mustang being that way. But this GR Corolla, this little pint-sized powerhouse, is like perfect for something like that. It just feels really cool to be able to like effectively at the touch of a button or at the switch of a dial, be able to change the driving characteristics so quickly.
Very good.
I think that's a good
Yeah.
rate.
It's a good rave. I'll have a rant next time.
It's
I'll
a
be
good
ready to
rave,
go.
and I obviously didn't give you a chance to talk about it when we were talking about the car, so a good way of working it in.
You know, if nothing else, I'm good at working into a conversation.
You are. Excellent. Okay, no one has anything else. I guess that's going to kind of wrap up our podcast for today. I want to thank our two-wheeling reporter and senior writer, Brian Robinson.
Love it.
Our digital producer, Jessica Ray, and our staff writer, Alex Kellum. Everybody, thank you very much. Hey, out there, if you're wondering what time MotorWeek can be seen on your local public television station, hop on over to our website, motorweek.org. Click on the tab Watch MotorWeek and then enter your zip code for the days and times in your area. Or you can drive on over to our cable partner, mavtv.com, and take a look at their schedule. They're very generous in airing episodes of MotorWeek. You can also watch MotorWeek and other PBS programming anytime, anywhere with the free PBS app. Download the app now on your smartphone, tablet, or smart TV, and you'll never miss a mile of MotorWeek. By the way, all the individual road test and features are also available at youtube.com/MotorWeek. If you've got a screen, you can watch MotorWeek. And all of you out there, I want to let everyone know that we have enjoyed being with you today. And do we have anything else before we wrap it up?
No, that's it.
Man, I think
Alex?
you covered it.
Yeah, that's
Oh
everything.
man, put me on the spot. Oh man.
No?
No, I don't
We're-
think
we're
so.
good.
I
All right. You sure? One more time.
Wrap
Alex?
it up,
Come on,
please.
Alex.
oh man, I don't know. I'm not dumb. I'm just panicking.
All right, we'll let him off the hook. Thanks,
You need to
everybody,
get that
making this
shirt.
podcast possible today. Our extra special thanks to Jessica Ray for being the podcast producer, audio engineer David Wainwright, the great David Wainwright, podcast creator Bob Mixter. Till next time, I'm John Davis. Thank you all for being a part of MotorWeek.
You have been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper and TireRack.com. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at motorweek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series each week on your local PBS station.